Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another session of the daily news analysis, but this is the work from home version. So, the next 2 3 videos will be coming out to you like this before we come back to our classroom board. So, welcome to this session for current affairs, where we take up the important articles featuring in the Hindu newspaper and break them down for our understanding from the examination point of view. So, let's start with today's session. So I hope the contents are visible on the screen. Let's start by the session by taking the important articles, and let's start with now the first article of the day. The first article which features on our screen and in the newspaper reads the lowdown on the essential medicines list. Now, this particular article appears in the newspaper in the context of because a recent event that has happened where the Union Health Ministry launched the new national list of essential medicines of 2022. Now, this particular list is what becomes important for us from the examination point of view, where and which also is the focus of our discussion, which is the National List of Essential Medicine or NLEM. Now, this list, as the name suggests, is a list of essential medicine which has 384 drugs which have been included in this list, with addition of 34 drugs, where 34 drugs have been added, and 26 of these drugs which were there in the previous list have been dropped. So this is the development that has happened. So in this backdrop, what we'll be doing is we'll be analyzing the national list for essential medicine. What exactly is it? How is it formed? What are those medicines which are included in this national list of medicine? And we'll know more about it. So what is this national list of medicine? So as per the WHO, essential medicines are those that satisfy the priority healthcare needs of the population. So essential medicines are those, as per the WHO, which satisfy the priority healthcare needs of the population. So what in India is known as the national list of medicines? The previous slide showed us which were the medicines which were taken out from the list. So we'll just come to that in a bit. First, let's understand about the national list of essential medicines. Now, the national list of essential medicines is a list released by the Ministry of Health and Family Healthcare. So this is the ministry from which the list comes on, and the body which prepares and releases this list is the National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority. So these medicines listed are sold below a price ceiling which is fixed by this NPPA, or National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority. Excuse me. So in India, it was framed on the lines of the essential medicines list released by the WHO, as we saw. So the Ministry of Health and Family Healthcare prepared and released the first national list of essential medicines in India in the year 1996, consisting of 279 medicines. So the first list came out in the year 1996, and then this list kept on getting updated and amended. So it was revised first in the year 2003, then it was revised in the year 2011, then in 2015, and then finally in the year 2022, which is the recent updation of this list. So what has happened? What is the purpose of maintaining such a national list for essential medicine? So as we see, that it's necessary to maintain such a register of medicines which are essential medicine is the purpose is to guide safe and effective treatment of priority disease conditions of a population. So when we enlist certain medicines as essential medicines, we basically demarcate that these are the medicines which are required by the majority population of the country, and they require the treatment through these medicines. And the second is to promote the rational use of medicines. That is also a purpose. Then third is to optimize the available health resources of a country. It can also be a guiding document for the state governments to prepare their list of essential medicines and procurement and supply of medicines in the public sector. So this is the purpose of maintaining a national list of essential medicines. Basically, it gives an indication to the public and the state governments and other authorities as to which medicines are the priority in the healthcare sector, and therefore their availability and efficiency and affordability should be taken care of. This is the purpose of the list. Now, let's come to what are the criteria for a medicine to be included in this national list of essential medicines list. So there are several factors that are looked at before including a drug in such a list. So these are, first is the essentiality, as we saw, which is that essential medicine which is required for the general public, many people at large. So medicine may be essential considering the population at large and should fit into the definition mentioned earlier. Then the second is changing disease burden. This is what calls for the updation of the list, wherein with time the disease burden keeps changing in the country. So at one point TB might be more important to tackle, and the next moment another disease like COVID may become more important. So the prevalent disease is considered while prevailing the list. That is why the list which gets updated keeps into mind which are the medicines, and consequently attached to which diseases are they being and which diseases are being more prevalent, and their the one can say the disease rate in the society is more. So that will also be a deciding factor in including the medicine in the list or not. Third is the efficacy and safety. This becomes a very logical criteria, wherein the medicine that is included in this essential list has to be a efficient medicine and a safe medicine. So let's say that of medicine X treating some disease is there in the list, and suddenly few months later another medicine Y comes into the market which is more efficient, which is safer than the previous medicine. So the list would update itself and include the medicine Y instead of including the medicine X in this manner. Similar is the factor for effectiveness, wherein the total price of the treatment must be considered while including the drug in this list. So only unit price may not be the best benchmark for this. What this means is that the cost effectiveness of the medicine also becomes a deciding factor. So the more cost effective the medicine is, the better chances it will have to get included in the list of medicines. And then last one is the fixed dose combinations, or FDCs. So the single dose medicines are considered for inclusion in the national list of essential medicines, and FDCs are only included if they have a proven advantage concerning the therapeutic effect. What this means is that since the single dose medicines, those medicines which one has to take only as a single dose, are given priority in including in this list because they become very easier to intake. But the fixed dose combinations, or those medicines which are to be taken in a fixed dose and in a regimented manner, they are little complicated to take. That is why they are given secondary preference, but they are also included if they have a proven advantage concerning the therapeutic effect. So that is the criteria for choosing a medicine, whether or not it would be included in this national list of essential medicines or not. Next is our, when is a medicine deleted from such a national list? This is the question of today's article, deciding why are the medicines which were taken out of the list, why are they being taken out? So a drug is deleted from the list if it gets banned in India. This is the very logical criteria. If the drug is itself banned in India, it would be released from the list. So also it is removed if reports of concerns about the drug safety emerge. So this is also a very logical point, where if the safety of the drug is in question, that the medicine would not find its place in the national list. If medicine with better efficacy or favorable safety profile and better cost effectiveness is now available, then also it is removed from the national list of essential medicine. This point was what we saw in the essential criteria as well. So now let's come to which are those medicines which are now taken out from the national list of essential medicine. So there are four major anti-cancer drugs: insulin glargine, an anti-diabetic drug, then some patented drugs known as dolutegravir, which is basically an anti-HIV drug, then common gastrointestinal drug ranitidine is also removed, and disinfectants like bleaching powder is also taken off from the list. So these are the major medicines that have been taken out from the list, and it has been updated. So 36 items have been removed and 28 items have been added. So the important points with respect to prelims would be that this list is taken out under which ministry. So that becomes the National Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, and which body prepares this list. So that would be the National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority, or NPPA. So these would be the important pointers from the prelims examination. And with this, we finish this article, and let's move on to our next article for the day. The next article which appears in the newspaper now reads, UNESCO experts visits Hassan's Hoysala temple. Now this particular article becomes important because of the Hoysala architecture or Hoysala temple, which forms an important part of art and culture in our examination. And therefore, let's understand what this news is about. So, the Hoysala rulers were the rulers of erstwhile Karnataka region, and these rulers built temples in the region. And these temples are of very distinct architecture. So the Hoysala temples of Belur, Halebid, and Somanathapura in Karnataka were finalized as India's nomination for consideration as UNESCO's World Heritage Sites to be nominated or to get the tag of UNESCO's World Heritage Sites for the year 2022-2023. So this was done in the month of February 2022. The nominations were sent, and now, as the article is saying, an expert from the International Commission on Monuments and Sites, Tiong Kian Boom, has visited the Hoysaleshwar temple of Halebid in Karnataka's Hassan's district. So this is the news right now, wherein after India sent its nomination, an expert from the International Commission on Monuments and Sites, which is affiliated to UNESCO, has visited the temple now. And after visiting and conducting inspections on the temple, he will prepare a report and submit to UNESCO. So what is the significance of gaining a UNESCO's World Heritage Site tag? So a World Heritage Site is a landmark or an area with legal protection by an international convention administered by the UNESCO or United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. So the UNESCO is a body, as we know, which deals with protection of the educational, scientific and cultural aspects. So since the monuments which are important in all the countries are a part of cultural heritage of not just that country but the whole world, that is why UNESCO is very much interested in preserving these monuments. And therefore, to preserve these monuments, it gives the monuments a tag, that of World Heritage Site. And when one monument receives this World Heritage Site tag, it means that it is getting legal protection, and therefore the preservation status of this monument gets increased. And therefore these World Heritage Sites are designated by UNESCO for having cultural, historical, scientific or other form of significance. This is the significance of UNESCO's World Heritage Site tag. Now let's come to the Hoysala. Before we get to the Hoysala architecture, let's understand about the Hoysalas themselves. So as we can see in the map, the Hoysalas were the rulers which occupied the region which forms the today's part of state of Karnataka. And they were essentially the feudatories of Chalukyas of Kalyan. So the ruler who Sala was the first, Sala or would be the correct pronunciation, was the founder of this dynasty. And Dwar Samudra or Halebidu, which is the temple, Hoysaleshwar temple, which the expert has visited, is in this place itself. Halebidu was their capital, was their erstwhile capital. And talking about their greatest ruler, his name is Vishnuvardhan or Bitti Dev. He was regarded as the greatest in Hoysala dynasty, and he was the one who completely routed Cholas from the Ganga Wadi in Battle of Talakadu. For this, he got the title of Talkadu Gonda. And in commemoration of this victory, he built the Kirti Narayan temple at Talakadu and Chennakeshwar temple at Belluru. So, since this article has appeared in the newspaper and focus has been given by the Indian government itself on the Hoysala architecture, so from the examination point of view, what becomes important for us is to know about the Hoysala architecture, and whatever are the prominent temples of the Hoysala architecture, we should know an important pointers about those temples. So let's learn about the Hoysala architecture. So talking about the Hoysala rulers, when were they ruling? Their rule was between the 11th and the 14th centuries, and within this period they marked a distinct style of building their temples. So Hoysala architecture therefore is the building style developed under the rule of Hoysala empire between 11th and 14th centuries, which mostly concentrated in southern Karnataka. As we saw, these temples are sometimes called hybrid or Vesara, as their unique styles represents both Dravida and Nagara styles. So when we study art and culture, we get to know these two styles of temple construction. One is the Nagara style architecture, which is mostly found in the northern region of India. And the Dravida style of temple architecture is found mostly in the southern region of India. But the hybrid Vesara style is supposed to be the style which combines elements from both Dravida and the Nagara style of temples. Therefore, the Hoysala temples form a part of this hybrid structure. Now, these Hoysala temples contain multiple shrines grouped together and around a central pillared hall and laid out in the shape of an intricately designed star. Now, this is an important feature which one should remember, that their temples contain multiple shrines which are placed in a manner which look like a intricately designed star. Now, when we look at the design of the temples, we'll get to see how they resemble such a star. And the next point is that they are made of soapstone, which is relatively a soft stone. So they're made up of, major temples are made up of a stone known as soapstone, and they're easily distinguishable from other medieval temples by their highly original star-like ground plans and a profusion of decorative carvings. So these are the major general pointers with respect to the architecture styles of the Hoysala temples. Now let's look at the important famous temples which are talked about whenever we talk about Hoysala architecture. So the important famous temples are Hoysaleshwara temple at Halebid, Karnataka, which was built in the dark schist stone by the Hoysala king in 1150 AD. So this is the temple, Hoysaleshwara temple at Halebid, where the expert has come to inspect. So that becomes a point of study for us. The other important temples are the Chenna Keshava temple in Somnathpura, Karnataka, built around 1268 AD under ruler Narsimha III. And third is the Keshava temple at Bellur, Karnataka, built by Vishnuvardhan, who we saw was the greatest ruler of his Hoysala dynasty. So let's take a look at these temples one by one. First is the Hoysaleshwara temple in Halebedu. So about this temple, at the zenith of the Hoysala Empire, the capital was shifted from Belur to Halebid, that was then known as Dwar Samudra. This we saw was the capital of Hoysalas, and this Hoysaleshwara temple at Halebedu is the most exemplary architectural ensemble of the Hoysalas extant today. This is the site which has been mentioned, which has been nominated to be tagged as the World Heritage Site tag. So built in the 1121 CE or AD during the reign of Hoysala king Vishnuvardhan Hoysaleshwara. The temple is dedicated to Shiva and was sponsored and built by the wealthy citizens and merchants of Dwar Samudra. The temple is most well known for more than 240 wall sculptures that run all along the outer wall. So as we saw, this was the distinct feature of the Hoysaleshwara temples, that the outer temples have intricate wall carvings and they are made in a manner which resemble intricate star-like feature. So as we can see in this temple, there are multiple halls which are placed in a manner which look like a star. And the Halebid has a walled complex containing of 3 Jaina Basadi or Jaina temples of the Hoysala period as a stepped well. So one thing which is important to notice about the Hoysala architecture, all the rulers were that the religion that they promoted were Shaivism, Jainism, and these kind of religions, right? So this was about the Hoysaleshwara temple. What are the other two temples that we should know about? The other is the Channa Keshava temple, which is in Bellur. This Channa Keshava temple complex was at the center of the old walled town located on the banks of the Yagachi river. This complex itself was walled in a rectangular campus with 4 rectilinear streets around it for ritual circumambulation of the deity. See, this is where we can see multiple things protruding out and resemble a star-like structure. This was constructed in the year 1117 AD and took 103 years to complete. This temple is devoted to Vishnu. First one was to Shiva, and the richly sculpted exterior narrates scenes from the life of Vishnu and his reincarnations from the epics Mahabharata and the Ramayana. However, some of the representations of Shiva are also included. Consecrated on a sacred site, the temple has remained continuously worshipped since its establishment and remains until today as a site of pilgrimage for the Vaishnavites. So, since the temple is a ode to Vishnu, that is why the Vaishnavites pray and they consider this temple as a site of pilgrimage for themselves. The next important temple is the Keshav temple, which is in Somnathpur. So the Keshav temple in Somnathpur is another magnificent Hoysala monument. This is a breathtakingly beautiful Trikut temple. As we can see, Trikut or 3 pillars. It is dedicated to Lord Krishna in 3 forms: Janardhan, Keshav, or Venugopal. Unfortunately, the main Keshav idol is missing, and the Janardhan and Venugopal idols are damaged. Still, this temple is worth a visit just to soak in the artistry and sheer talent of the sculptors who created this magnificent monument to the divine. So we saw three temples, each depicting the architecture elegance of Hoysalas. One is dedicated to Shiva, which is the temple which is mentioned in the article, the Hoysaleshwara temple. Second is dedicated to Vishnu, which is the Channakeshwara temple. And third is dedicated to Lord Krishna, which is the Keshav temple. So these were the important temples and the background information which we must understand and know about the Hoysala rulers and their style of architecture. So with this, we finish this article and let's move on to the next article. The next article which features in the newspaper reads, Cabinet approves addition of 4 tribes to ST list. Now, this article becomes important because, as the news tells us, that the cabinet committee, Union Cabinet Committee, has approved certain tribes to be included in the scheduled tribe list. So, from that, the polity aspect question which arises for us is to understand as to what exactly is this scheduled tribe list and who can edit it, who can add or subtract names from it. So that becomes an important question for us to answer, and in that aspect we'll understand about the scheduled tribes, the list that is made for them, and the names that are included, and under which provisions of the constitution are these decisions being made. So let's understand about the scheduled tribes and their inclusion in the scheduled tribes list. First, we need to understand is that India has one of the largest and diverse populations in the tribal populations in the world. And in India, according to the 2011 census, the tribal population was 104 million, which accounted for 8.6% of the total population of India. And we can say that this has significantly increased if the new census happens, which tells us the importance of studying and analyzing the demographics of the scheduled tribes. And therefore, the constitution also wanted to give enough significance to the status of scheduled tribes, and therefore the term scheduled tribes first appeared in the Constitution of India, wherein in Article 366 clause 25 of the Constitution defined scheduled tribes as such tribes or tribal communities or part of or groups within such tribes or tribal communities as are deemed under Article 342. So 342 gave the conditions, and they would be included under a list of under Article 342, and Article 366 says that those names which would satisfy the conditions under Article 342 would be deemed as the scheduled tribes for the purposes of this constitution. So what is this Article 342? Article 342 prescribes the procedure that is to be followed in the matter of specification of scheduled tribes. So let's understand about Article 342. Now, the Article 342 says that the President may, with respect to any state or union territory, and where it is a state, after a consultation with the governor thereof by public notification, specify the tribes or tribal communities or parts of or groups within tribes or tribal communities which shall, for the purposes of this constitution, is deemed to be scheduled tribes in relation to that state or union territory as the case may be. So as we understand from this first point is that the authority to designate a scheduled tribe for any state is with the president, or as we can say, the union government would decide, and the president would then give the names of the scheduled tribe. And we can also see from this point that each state can have different list of the scheduled tribe. So if, let's say, a state of Maharashtra has certain tribes known as scheduled tribes, they might not be the same scheduled tribes enlisted in the state of Madhya Pradesh, and that state of Madhya Pradesh could have an entirely different list of scheduled tribes, because various tribes are situated in various states, and that is why this differentiation at the state level is important. That is why the kind of provision in this Article 342 of the Constitution. Next point is the Parliament may by law include in or exclude from the list of scheduled tribes specified in a notification issued under Clause 1 any tribe or tribal community or part of or group within any tribe or tribal community, but save as aforesaid, a notification issued under the said clause shall not be varied by any subsequent notification. So what we gather from this is that the names that would be decided by the president, the parliament has the authority through an act to either include in or exclude from the list of scheduled tribes. So the parliament also has a role to play in this, and thus the first specification of scheduled tribes in relation to a particular state or union territory is by a notified order of the president after consultation with the state governments concerned, and these orders can be modified subsequently only through an act of the parliament. So this is what we understand is the course of law when we talk about enlisting certain tribes as scheduled tribes under the constitution. When these tribes are enlisted as scheduled tribes, we know that there are various benefits and provisions with respect to their governance which are attached in the constitution, and when they get the tag, they get all these benefits. These scheduled tribes can avail all these benefits. So now coming to the article, which are these communities, tribal communities, which are added to the scheduled tribe list of various states. So the Hatti tribe in the Transgiri area of Sirmaur district in Himachal Pradesh has been added to the scheduled tribe list of Himachal Pradesh, and the Narikoravan or Kurivikaran hill tribes of Tamil Nadu are added in the scheduled tribe list of Tamil Nadu. And the Binjia tribe in Chhattisgarh, which was listed as a scheduled tribe in state of Jharkhand and Odisha, but not in the state of Chhattisgarh, have also now been included in the state list of Chhattisgarh, which is the Binjia tribe. So this is what we understand, that each states have different scheduled tribe list, and the authority to enlist their name lies with the president, and further modification can be done only by a law enacted in the parliament. This is the polity aspect of this topic which we must understand. And with this, let's move on to our next article for the day. The next article which appears in the newspaper reads, "Set up new regulator for medical devices, says panel." So now this is an important article which is featuring in the newspaper, which talks about the emerging industry of medical devices. As we know, the healthcare sector and the healthcare industry has rapidly transformed, and the advent of technology has also been faced by the medical sector, and that is why the extent of medical devices which hospitals, clinics, and every healthcare facility is using has increased manifold, and therefore the regulation of these medical devices has become very, very critical. In the times of COVID itself, we saw so many medical devices, right from the pulse oximeter to testing kits to oxygen oximeter. All these are what medical devices, and therefore the presence and extent of these medical devices has increased manifold. So in that aspect, a parliamentary committee on health, parliamentary standing committee on health, which was headed by Professor Ram Gopal Yadav, who is an MP in the Rajya Sabha, presented its 138th report on the subject, medical devices, its regulation and control, which stated majorly that the CDSCO, or the Central Drug uh, uh, State Control Organization, in its existing structure and expertise, is more pharma centric, and therefore there is need to regulate the medical devices, and maybe there is a need to establish a separate regulator to regulate on the medical devices. This committee observed that the CDSCO was originally set up to regulate pharma related segments and medical devices, and it has recommended that a new legislation should be set up and a new set of regulator at a different levels for regulating the medical devices industry. So what is the CDSCO? CDSCO, or the Central Drug Standard Control Organization, functions under the Directorate General of Health Services, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, is the National Regulatory Authority of India. So this is the premier organization. It is a statutory organization formed under which act? The Drugs and Cosmetics Act. So the CDSCO is a standard control organization, which means that in the pharmaceutical sector, in the medical sector, whatever drugs, whatever devices, what the standard that they should have, that is decided by this body known as the CDSCO, and it is formed under the Drugs and Cosmetics Act. Therefore, we can say that it's a statutory body, and it functions under which ministry? The Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. So it is responsible for approval of new drugs, conduct of clinical trials, laying down the standards for drugs, control over the quality of imported drugs in the country, and coordination of the activities of state drug control organizations by providing expert advice with a view to bring about the uniformity in enforcement of the Drugs and Cosmetics Act. So therefore, it's a very important organization. And in the times of COVID, we often used to hear the mention of CDSCO giving its regulatory approvals for a lot of drugs and other things. So CDSCO, along with state regulators, is jointly responsible for grant of licenses of certain specified categories or specialized categories of critical drugs such as blood and blood products, IV fluids, vaccines, and sera. So this is the all the type of functions which the CDSCO carries out. This becomes very important for us from the prelims examination point of view. Now let's come to what this parliamentary health committee has given out in its report. So what are the highlights? The committee has observed that the country has only 18 certified medical device testing laboratories. So they show the lack of adequate presence of these laboratories, testing laboratories which certify medical devices and which have been approved by the CDSCO. And these only having 18 laboratories all over the country is grossly inefficient, keeping in view the size. And therefore, the committee is of the considered opinion that having adequate common infrastructure, including accredited laboratories in various regions of the country for standard testing, would improve the availability and affordability of the medical devices, right? Because when there would be laboratories where these medical devices can be tested, it would encourage the local vendors to manufacture and get the device tested. And once more devices are there, it would improve the availability and also the affordability of medical devices in the domestic market. So more consumers would be able to buy these medical devices. Therefore, the medical devices testing laboratories and their adequate presence in the all over the country is very important. So the committee noted that there is a dire need for developing a robust IT enabled feedback driven post market surveillance system. What this means is that there should be a system which should be IT enabled, which means that automated system of feedback generation should be there. Who is using which kind of medical devices, what is their feedback on their usage. The feedback should go to the manufacturers, go to the licensors, go to the regulators. So there should be a feedback system, and there should be a post market surveillance system, again, which talks about dealing with the feedback that the product is generating for these medical devices, which is to evaluate the efficiency of such medical devices. So this is the suggestion that they make. Another is the setting up of a medical device registry, which means that a register of medical devices, particularly for implants, should also be made to ensure traceability of patient. So which medical device is being used or purchased by whom, which would ensure traceability of patients who has received the implant in order to assess the performance of the implant and ascertain up to what extent the implant has made the life of the patient comfortable, and also to seek feedback of functional capacity of medical devices. So such measures would ensure that the patients get access to good quality and approved medical devices. So as we see, this particular report highlights the essential nature of these medical devices, and it also highlights the absence of regulation and absence of these testing facilities which exist. And therefore it is saying that the CDSCO is not functioning adequately in the medical device sector, and what is needed is a separate regulator to deal with medical device testing. And hence, so that more the testing facilities and laboratories are evolving, more devices would be tested, more devices would come into the market, more people would be able to buy them. And after they are buying, there should also be a feedback system which analyzes the performance of these medical devices and gives out the important information to again better the moves of this particular